Yo, welcome into the show, BroMob. We are your hosts, Chad and Brian. Today is Monday, September 3rd, and you all know what that means. This is week 1 of the NFL season. It is here finally. It feels like it's been forever, Brian, hasn't it?
Yep, and I can't wait. This has been one of the longest weeks ever. It
is the marking of the 100th season in the NFL, which is incredible to me.
Yep.
But yeah, this is going to be a great season. I can't wait. This marks the first episode of our in-season episodes where Brian and I are going to be doing twice weekly episodes now. So, BroMob, you get double the dose of the bros here, which is unfortunate for you to listen to Brian twice a year. But it is what it is. At least you get me twice. So it cancels each other out, gives you a really good show.
Hey, people that only complain about bleeding ears at least like once a week, maybe twice. It's not that bad.
Whenever you get any complaints towards bleeding ears, it should always be bad. So you can try to chalk it up as glass half full here, but it's always going to be glass all the way empty when you're involved, Brian. So
glass shattered against wall.
Yes. So week 1 of the NFL season also means that, Brian, we have got allergy season upon us, which is absolutely hammering me right now. Everyone out there with allergies, you know what I'm talking about. I'm getting destroyed. I just threw a couple of horse pills in me to try and fix that. We'll see where it goes.
Horse pills.
Yeah, horse pills. They're in the shape of horses, and they giddy up into my soul to clear my sinuses. So
I love it. I love
pretty
the
excited
horse
about
pills.
those. I'm also pretty excited about this episode. Today we're going to be going over week 1 analysis about all of the games that are going on, some of our favorite games, some of the games that were a little iffy or scary on, and then also go over our streamers of the week, just quarterbacks, tight ends, defenses, you name it. We're going to help you out with your streaming options this week. Brian, how are you doing, man?
Doing great, man. I'm excited. So a lot going on with fantasy this week. We're getting prepped. We've got a lot to share with our BroMob today, and a lot going on with KT3 actually too. So we're updating the season prep piece now, which is actually at least the navigation piece, and some of the intricate parts of it are live. So the layout of it is ready to go, and we'll be updating stuff usually on Tuesdays and Wednesdays along with the podcast, and looking really forward to that. That's going to be a blast.
Yeah, I can't wait either. We've got so much information for the BroMob to just continue to dominate their leagues every single week. So guys, go out there and check it out, keytothetitle.com. If you haven't already, there's just a plethora of information out there. So, I was also really excited about college football starting up, especially being a Wisconsin Badger fan. I had quite an exciting weekend watching Mr. Jonathan Taylor just go absolutely nuts. Dynasty owners out there were just salivating, waiting to see, oh my goodness, am I going to get a top pick this coming season? Am I going to have a chance to take this guy? Because he looked good. He was used in the passing game, which was actually surprising considering that he had never caught a receiving touchdown in college yet. So he had 2 of those in the game in the first half. So it's pretty exciting.
It's really exciting. I have 3 first-round draft picks in our Dynasty League of Record next year. We're really looking forward to that.
Nobody cares. You're going to need them because you're going to mess them all up. So
hey, I got three balls coming in. I get to swing 3 times.
Hopefully you hit them.
One of those I'm hoping to hit a home run with. I'm swinging for the fences on all 3 of them.
I'm definitely seeing a strikeout coming along here. So, BroMob, let's move on.
Hopefully I don't grab
and get into this week's show. But first, be sure to follow along after the show by following us on Twitter and Instagram at FFBros Podcast. And be sure to search that hashtag BroMob for any kind of news, information, injury alerts, stuff like that out there. Brian and I are very active on our Twitter, so be sure to follow along there. Let's get started with the show. Before we get into the show this week, BroMob, I made a mistake in the beginning of this episode. If you can find it, post it on Twitter, let us know what it was, share our episode, and we'll put you in a running to win some free Fantasy Football Bros swag. So figure out where I messed up, post it on Twitter, and you'll be entered. what a crazy week we had. um, so I'll start it off with this. Chargers running back Melvin Gordon is officially not going to be playing week 1. We were all pretty prepared for this, but it's now official. He's not playing. So BroMob, find a replacement. Everybody that drafted him in the 4th round or earlier, apologies there. You might not get the return that you were hoping for in week 1, or some kind of a trade or anything happening, because it didn't happen. So keep him on your bench. If you have Austin Eckler, Brian, what's your recommendation here? Do you recommend playing Eckler?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm starting him across the board in every league. You definitely want to play him. I mean, he's the starting running back on a very good offense. They're playing the Colts. I still don't think that defense is going to be that great. They'll be better, but I'm running and they're at home, so they're going to be in Los Angeles. And I have this feeling that the Chargers are going to show Melvin Gordon that they don't need him.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen.
Don't make him. I think Dallas is the same way. I think if Zeke's not signed, which we'll get to that in a second, I think he's the same thing, right? I think Pollard is going to get heavily used. And so, yeah, but definitely start Austin Eckler across the board.
I'm a little more hesitant on Eckler, just because I do think the Colts defense is better than people think it is. They got some really good linebackers there that can stop the run, but I just think that having Jacoby Brissett there instead of Andrew Luck to kind of manage the offense and keep it rolling at a good steady pace is going to keep the defense on the field longer, tire them out. So Eckler, I do think is a good play, but I'm a little bit more on the iffy side, saying, hopefully I got him as a flex, right? Or I got him as an RB2 instead of my number 1 running back. So let's move into what Brian was kind of talking here, and that is Cowboys running back Zeke Elliott has been working with the Cowboys to finalize a deal, but it sounds as if the parameters are still nowhere close to be to what Zeke's looking for, his agents are looking for. So deal's not happening yet. They were hoping to get it done over the weekend. It didn't happen. We're getting closer to week 1 to the first game. Should fantasy owners start to find their replacement for Zeke?
Yeah, I think you should. Here's the deal. The good news is they don't play until Sunday. But I think the deadline is Tuesday. Like, he has to have a deal done by Tuesday. Otherwise, I don't think he's eligible to play on Sunday. I might be wrong on that, but I remember hearing something about that from Jane Slater, beat writer out of Dallas. And so, let's say Dallas gets him signed by the end of the day tomorrow, and he's ready to go. Are you starting him across the board automatically in that game against the Giants, Chad?
If Zeke's ready to go?
If Zeke signs, by tomorrow night, right before midnight, Zeke signs, and he's at practice. Let's say he's at practice Wednesday. Best case scenario are you playing him?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mainly because if I've drafted him, I've spent money on him. Right, he's in my first round.
Sure.
Because that's where he was going pretty much universally in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. So I'm starting Zeke confidently too. The Giants defense isn't going to be anything spectacular, and the Cowboys are going to lean on Zeke. But let's say if he doesn't, I still think Tony Pollard has a chance to be a really good starter for your team, a flex play that could win you week 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully if you drafted Zeke, you drafted his handcuff.
Yeah, hopefully.
Tony Pollard, because he looks like the real deal. And so I think you definitely want to have both of those if you're a Zeke owner right now. And if you don't have them, then you want to, hopefully you've drafted depth at the position like we've been teaching you all offseason, to wait on those quarterbacks and some of those tight ends, gobble up those running backs and wide receivers so that when you have moments like this, you have the depth to plug and play, and you don't have to let go of people just to plug somebody in for 1 or 2 weeks. So this is a good opportunity to learn, and hopefully we're seeing the fruits of those labors throughout the offseason, and you've drafted Tony Pollard. But I'm starting Tony Pollard if Zeke doesn't play in all leagues across the board. How about you?
Oh, absolutely. And actually what I'm trying to do more of, if I have Tony Pollard and I don't have Zeke and someone else in my league has Zeke, I'm trying to trade him to the Zeke owner right now for as much as I can. And if after week 1, if the contract situation still looks iffy, I'm poking that button harder every time. Because the more Zeke is out, the more you can play the, is this Lev Bell 2.0? You just keep poking that in their mind, and it's going to scare them. And Pollard's value is going to go up, especially if he has a good week. So right now I'm trying to trade Pollard, but if I can't get a deal done with the person that has Zeke, he still thinks Zeke's going to sign, he'll come back week 2, I'm starting Pollard, and I'm showing him, hey, even if Zeke does come back, and let's say he does get injured, I've got Zeke's backup right here. So I'm trying to push that as much as I can.
Chad, let me ask you this. At what point does Zeke become a massive trade target? I mean, right now, if you can get him right now, I feel like the value is still he's still too expensive. People are holding off. They're holding their breath, hoping that he does sign that deal, right? But week 1 goes by. That's what they were expecting at worst. Week 2, that was kind of the next step. Week 3 comes along and he's not signed. Are you trying to? Are we talking trade bait at this point?
So honestly, I think week 2 is when owners are going to start panicking because it's still very fresh in our minds what happened last season with Lev Bell. And what we're seeing with Melvin Gordon go on, people could be saying, oh, well, you know what? They might be talking to each other. They might be seeing what's going on and trying to push this market in their own favor. So at week 2, it could become a point where the owners of Zeke are starting to get scared and they just want to get whatever they can for him, right? It's not going to be for free, but you're going to be able to trade somebody like a Phillip Lindsay paired with a wide receiver, right? Somebody who's going to get points for somebody, and you could possibly get Zeke in that week too. If it carries on in the week 3, I think Zeke's going for next to nothing.
Yeah, well, I don't know about next to nothing. I think his
next
name still holds
value.
Well, his name alone is going to carry value throughout the entire season. I remember that last year with Bell. Even towards the middle part of the season, some of the Bell owners were saying, he comes back, he's automatically a top 3 running back, and that holds value. So Zeke's the same situation. I think his name carries a lot of value, but I agree with you. Pairing together a running back wide receiver or trying to upgrade one of these running backs, like for example, like a Mark Ingram. That would be a perfect pairing, right? To be able to upgrade a Mark Ingram to a Zeke Elliott is a big deal. Being able to upgrade as much as I love him, he's my guy, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones gets off to a hot start here the first couple weeks. I think week 1 is going to be a little tough, but he gets off to a pretty good start. Pairing Aaron Jones with a wide receiver or something like that could be a big deal. So yeah, I think those are the things you want to be looking for in these first couple weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on here. LeSean McCoy, cut by the Bills. A little shocking. We kind of anticipated it in a way. We knew cuts were coming to Buffalo, and LeSean McCoy was speculated a little whiles back, but it was more so looking, because of the way they were using him in the preseason, it looked more like it was going to be someone like TJ Yeldon, maybe Frank Gore. We didn't know. But McCoy, cut by the Bills, and almost instantaneously was getting offers from the LA Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs. His old coach there, Andy Reid, wanting a part of that, and also his old coach with Buffalo, Anthony Lynn there in LA. Both of them wanted him because they know the talent that LeSean's got, and he could bring it to those teams. With LA missing out on Melvin Gordon, and Kansas City actually having very little depth after trading Carlos Hyde. They only had Damian Williams and Darwin Thompson on the team, so they took the chance. Kansas City signed him. They got him to a 1-year deal with $3 million guaranteed, which is actually a pretty big deal. It puts him up there. And Brian, even with Andy Reid's comments just recently, it looks like he's going to be sharing duties with Damian Williams for that starting position. So Damian Williams, not the bell cow that people were hoping for if they drafted him in the 2nd or 3rd round. And LeSean McCoy coming in there could possibly outshine him, take his job. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think McCoy could have some small value week 1, but I don't think I'm not starting him unless I have to for week 1 anyway. I think Damian Williams is my start for that first week. I'm gonna bet on the guy that's been in the system, understands the playbook well. I get LeSean McCoy probably knows the system, having been in it before, but it's been a while. He's got to get up to speed. There's some chemistry there that he's got to build. So I would go more Damian Williams over McCoy, but I don't know that I want to be in this backfield at all for fantasy this year, except for matchups.
Yeah, agreed. Damian Williams is scary to me. If you drafted Darwin Thompson late in your drafts, with the hopes that he might take over from Damian Williams, because he looked really good this preseason. Darwin Thompson's now the number 3 running back on that depth chart. He's almost a drop at this point.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I think if you've got the roster depth and you can hang on to him for a while to hold your breath for some kind of an injury. I know McCoy's got an injury history. Damian Williams hasn't carried the load and also now had tweaked that hamstring earlier this year. That could reoccur. So he does still have some value if you wanted to hang on to him for a week or two. But yeah, I think he's almost droppable at this point.
Yeah, I think there's better options on the waiver wire right now in terms of backup running backs. There's ones that are actual backups instead of the third stringers. So Darwin Thompson has a few more hurdles to overcome other than those other running backs. So I drop him for other players on the waiver wire like Nyheim Hines, for example, Deion Lewis. I'd take him over him. Players like this because, A, they're going to have a role on the team already just being the backup. And then B, the ceiling for these players is astronomical if the starter goes down. So,
yep, I agree.
All right, Brian, let's get into our week 1 game analysis.
All right, analysis. Oh, it smells like carrots and throw up.
All right, starting off the first game of the NFL season on Thursday Night Football. It's a doozy, man. I'm actually really happy that they brought this game in for the 100th season of the NFL. Packers at Bears. I'm really excited for the game. Brian, what are you thinking about it?
I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a defensive game.
Could be.
I know historically it's been an offensive battle, with Rodgers throwing a lot, and I think the Bears defense is strong. I think the Packers defense is going to be sneaky good this year. And Vegas seems to think the same right now. I think the over-under is 46 for Vegas, and it's about what they've done the last year. If you look at the points that they scored, it's been about 40 to high 40s, like 50, like right in that range. So I think 46 is about right.
Yeah, these teams usually play each other really hard. I'm not really excited about many people for this first game. Davante Adams, of course, I'm always starting him, but he might not have the high-scoring points that you're looking for. He might not put up a 20-banger, but he might give you 12, right? So it's still a solid stat line for him. One player that I'm a little scared of from this matchup is Aaron Jones. Going against that number 1 Bears defense from last year, I don't see it declining any. They didn't really get rid of anybody. The defense should still be very powerful. Aaron Jones is a scary play for me. Brian, is there anybody that you're kind of looking at here that you're like, or anybody that you're kind of excited about for the game? Because I'm personally, I don't see a lot to like for it.
Yeah, so I get it with the Aaron Jones thing. I think it's hard for me because he's my.
Yeah, if you have him, you're starting him, right? Because you've probably drafted him in the 3rd or the 2nd.
Well, I don't know. If you've got options, then you've drafted a deep enough running back core or wide receiver core, you could go 3 wide if you have other options. Depends on what your team layout looks like, but look, just to put in perspective, Jordan Howard had 82 rushing yards against Green Bay last year. Didn't have a touchdown though, not on the ground, and Trubisky threw for 171 yards and no touchdowns in that game. But that was in Green Bay. But it was a primetime game. And don't think for a second that Chicago doesn't remember that game. I think they're going to come out hitting hard. And so I think there's going to be some opportunities on both sides of the ball to spot play some guys. But Aaron Jones is a guy that if you have other options, you might want to consider it. If not, then you got to start him. I get it. You drafted high for a reason. Jamal Williams rushed for 47 yards and no touchdowns against Chicago last year. So keep this in mind. Mm-hmm. And he was the leading rusher.
Impressive.
So, yeah, I think it's going to be more of a passing game. I think Chicago's going to take away the run game and they're going to put a lot of pressure on Rodgers just like last year. So I think it's going to be a rough night.
Yeah, and one thing to consider here, it looks more and more like Trey Burton, tight end for the Chicago Bears, will not be playing week 1. If you've drafted him later in your rounds, hoping to get a possible top 8 type of tight end, a guy who's going to get a lot of production, don't expect that week 1 because he will not be playing. So there's really no tight end here that I like either between the two of them, Trey Burton and Jimmy Graham from the other team. So, all right, let's get into the games for this week, Brian, that we're most excited for. I'm going to start it off here. The number one game that I'm most excited for from a fantasy perspective is the Ravens and the Dolphins. Mark Ingram, who I've already talked highly about for some time now. He's one of my guys. Mark Ingram is going against one of the worst rushing defenses in the league from last year, and they haven't improved that even remotely over the offseason. So Mark Ingram is up for some big stat lines. And on top of that, Lamar Jackson's up for some really big stat lines as well. I won't get into him too much because we have another segment later on we can talk about him, but there's a lot to like here. What's something to stay away from, Brian? Because I've already got it in my head, but what's something to kind of stay away from this game?
I would probably stay away from the wideouts in this game. I just don't think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think it's going to be a heavy run type game. Vegas has a 37 and a half point line on this game. Yeah. That's really low. So this is going to be a low scoring game. There's going to be a lot of points on the ground, but I do want to see what Lamar Jackson can do through the air. I'm excited to see what happens there.
Yeah, agreed. Brian, what's another game that excites you week 1?
So I mean, there's so many this year. I feel like
season starting, right?
Yeah. So I think this Monday, the dual Monday night football game, Houston, New Orleans, the first one up. I think that's gonna be a fun game. It's in New Orleans, in the Dome. There's a 54-point line on it from Vegas, so there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game is what the expectation is, and I don't disagree. I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game, a lot of fantasy points out of it. Houston really doesn't have a running back now. Duke Johnson's the guy there. Yeah, they brought in Hyde, but he's got to get up to speed. So I expect a lot of passing, and I want to see I can't wait to see what Kamara does, and it's just last year Kamara was the only guy. This year, to start the season this year, he's the only guy really. So it's exciting. I think that's going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, I agree too. I really like the wide receivers in this game, especially Will Fuller. Will Fuller's going to be huge. So DeAndre Hopkins is going to get Marshawn Lattimore covering him, blanketing him throughout the game. That leaves Will Fuller open for some really big plays. We all know that Shawn Watson loves to use him. He's got 11 touchdowns in 11 games played with Shawn Watson. So Will Fuller has a really big opportunity here to shine, especially if Kiki Coutier does not play week 1. It looks like he might, but Bill O'Brien's kind of keeping us on our toes, saying, I don't know what's going to happen yet. If he does play, he's going to be limited, which still brings in the upside of Will Fuller. I like what's happening there.
Yeah, another game that I like too, just to throw this out there, that Pittsburgh New England game on Sunday Night Football. That's going to be a fun game to watch. Brady's back. We got Ben. I want to see what this Pittsburgh offense looks like without Antonio Brown and without Lev Bell at the same time. It's going to be fun. It's kind of 50-50, right? There's like half of the coin out there thinks, they're going to be fine. You're going to see huge stats. And I'm actually on that side of the coin. I think Pittsburgh's going to be really good this year. And they've been quiet in camp, not a lot of flash this year. I think it's going to be fun to watch. And then you got the other side of the coin that thinks they're going to fall apart and without Antonio Brown, and that the only reason they've been successful is without AB. But I can tell you right now, the one thing Pittsburgh is really good at, actually there's two things that the Pittsburgh Steelers are good at. They're good at finding linebackers and developing linebackers, and they're really good at finding and developing wide receivers. They have been consistent with that over the years.
They've possibly been one of the better teams in the league to do that. But if anybody can find players and find the best role for them, it's going to be Belichick with the Patriots. So I really love this matchup because it's almost like the new Peyton Manning, Tom Brady matchups, right? Whenever you get to see Ben Roethlisberger versus Tom Brady, at least that's how it feels for me, because it seems that they play each other every year, whether or not it's in the regular season or it's in the playoffs. It doesn't matter. They're always going to play each other. Somebody's always going to win. There's going to be some kind of duel there. So I guess one of the last games that I'll mention right now that I'm really excited about is the Titans at Browns game. because I'm really excited to see what's going to happen there with Baker, OBJ, Nick Chubb, that whole offense, the explosiveness that we're all expecting, if it all meshes together or if it's just a disaster, right? If it crumbles apart. So I'm really excited to see what happens there. They have a good matchup there with the Titans to kind of blow up and do well against. So yeah, there's really, out of all the games, I think I'm most excited about that one, just to see how it turns out, right? I love it from a fantasy perspective because there's a lot of big names here, but I'm mostly excited about how are the Browns going to look, because I want them to be good. They haven't been good, and I can't tell you how long. And that fan base deserves a good team. So
yeah, I think that's going to be a fun game to watch. Is Baker going to succeed or not? You know, it's funny is Colin Cowherd thinks this is going to be an upset game and that Tennessee's going to thump them in the first game of the season.
Yeah, of course he does. That's Colin. He also has a beef with Baker Mayfield, so he's going to do that to get underneath Baker's skin because he knows Baker's watching him. So Colin's doing that on purpose.
But you know what's interesting is he bought the Vegas line on it, so he's not just doing it on purpose. He actually believes he believes it. He actually said he put money on this game.
I wonder if he put money on the other side as well and didn't talk about that. So we'll see.
Good point.
All right, Brian, let's move into games that scare us from a fantasy perspective. I'll start it off here. You might not agree with this one, but I'm going to start it off with the Bills at Jets. Josh Allen has a chance to kind of shine against the Jets here, but I think this is going to be a really big defensive game between the both teams. The Jets have added a lot to their defense this offseason. Sam Darnold is going to probably be a little bit more conservative against one of the better defenses from last year, especially the best pass defense from last year. So we might see a lot of Lev Bell. We might see a lot of Devin Singletary, who might get bottled up quite a bit. The Jets defense isn't anything to be scared of. It isn't anything to be kind of like pushing off, and neither is the Bills defense. So I see this as being a really big defensive game, and it kind of scares me from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, I think there's still some hidden opportunities.
There's opportunity.
Yeah, but I don't disagree.
Agree.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, look, Vegas has a 40 on the line for it. It's going to be a low-scoring game, and I agree with it. I don't know. I mean, I think there's some opportunity with probably the Jets and even with Buffalo, depending on what you're looking for. And one of the opportunities is going to be talked about here in a little bit by me.
What's a game that scares you, Brian?
So a scary game to me is this Detroit-Arizona game.
Yeah.
And so here's the deal. I'm not scared. I think it's going to actually be a fun game to watch because the excitement around Kyler Murray and the new Arizona offense and what's going on with Detroit and some of the players they've brought in. There's a lot of new stuff going on, and you want to see how it plays out. But you and I were just talking about this before the pod. I've been to a few Arizona Cardinal games, and that stadium is electric. It's a really, really loud stadium. There's a lot of energy in there, and Arizona Cardinal fans are passionate about their Cardinals team. It's crazy. Really, I think it's pretty interesting. So, and there's going to be a lot of Lions fans in there. So the stadium gets loud, and I'm sure they'll have the dome closed because of the heat here in the valley still. So I think you're going to have a very loud stadium, and I think it might end up being a low-scoring game as the time kind of winds down from it. I think Arizona will probably win the game, and I think the buzz week one will be how Kyler Murray shined in week one. I think it's gonna be interesting.
Interesting, definitely. I'm excited, but I'm scared like you. There's a couple of players that I do like from this matchup. And I'll be talking about them here in a little bit. But outside of that, there's some stuff that scares me. But another game that really scares me is the Denver at Oakland game. So, yes, John Gruden has been lighting up in Hard Knocks. We love the guy. It's going to be exciting to see John Gruden out there with his new offense. What can he do? But it's against Denver. And this is one of the better defenses in the league. Has been for the last 5 years. So I don't see a lot happening offensively for Oakland this game. I see them winning, and I believe Vegas has them winning this game as well. But outside of Oakland, Denver, there wasn't anybody from a fantasy perspective that I liked very much coming into this week against them other than Phillip Lindsay. But from an Oakland perspective, players like Antonio Brown, Josh Jacobs, Tyrell Williams, Darren Waller, these type of players, I'm not expecting huge outcomes from them because they're going up against this Denver defense, which is pretty tough.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I think that game's going to be low scoring as well and probably not indicative to a lot of fantasy points.
All right, Brian. Well, let's move into our streaming options for the week.
Boys, look, there's some people want to ride too. Pick them up.
This week's streamers.
All right, for week 1, we're going to start it off with the quarterbacks, and we've already talked about one of the games, Baltimore at Miami. Lamar Jackson against Miami, I see doing some really big things. He does not need to have a big stat line in the passing game, because if he puts up something like 60 yards and a touchdown, 80 yards and a touchdown on the ground against one of the worst rushing defenses in the league, all he needs to do is put up 200 yards passing and have 1 passing touchdown to have himself a top 8 quarterback week. So his floor is possibly the safest floor out of all of the quarterbacks in week 1. This is my favorite streaming option week 1. If you haven't drafted a quarterback within the first 10 rounds of your draft, don't worry, because he's going to do good for you.
Yeah, I think Lamar's great. He's going to be a guy that I not only does well this week, I think he can do well for a few weeks in a row here, right?
Yeah, his first 4 weeks are incredible. So if you've drafted him, you're possibly starting him all 4 weeks to start the season out.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about Lamar is even if they do have him sit in the pocket a little bit more, or maybe he's not sitting in the pocket, that's a bad word, but maybe he's throwing the ball a bit more. I know there's been reports that they're gonna throw more this year than they did last year with him, and I don't think that's a bad thing. That's what you want from a quarterback, and I get that rushing yards are more valuable than passing yards from a fantasy standpoint, but he's still his floor is going to be much higher than other quarterbacks because of his rushing ability.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's only one other quarterback whose floor I'm safer with, and that's Shawn Watson, who again has the rushing game and also has the benefit of playing against New Orleans, so he's going to have to throw the ball a lot. Patrick Mahomes, of course, everyone's going to say, "What? Why haven't you mentioned him?" I mean, he's going against Jacksonville. One of the best passing defenses in the league right there. So Pat Mahomes, I still love him, but I'm not looking at him as the number 1 quarterback week 1. Number 1, I definitely think Deshaun Watson's there, but Lamar Jackson is a close number 2 for me. I think he's a great streaming option.
Yeah, and look, he's available in a lot of leagues out there. ESPN, he's available in almost 23% of leagues. He's only rostered on 77.6% of leagues in ESPN format. So
there we go.
Yeah, I mean, if he's available and you need an option, go out and get him. He's a great week 1 start. All right, Chad. So another streaming option this week and that I absolutely love is quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, going up against the New York Giants on Sunday at home. You've got a very dynamic offense. The offensive line is back, and Dak has a tendency, to run the ball just like Lamar does. Maybe not just like. Let me pump those brakes for a moment.
Yeah.
However, yeah. Sorry about that. But he does take off from time to time, and especially when they're in the red zone, Chad. So inside that 5-yard line, Dak likes to take a shotgun snap and then, pause for a minute, scan the field, and then take off right up the gut. He's done that time in and time out. 3 years in a row, 6 rushing touchdowns on the season. Mm-hmm. So a lot of opportunity there, and I don't think it's a bad start week 1.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. So Dak Prescott is available. He's rostered in 92% of leagues on ESPN. So he's only available on 8%. He's been drafted by most teams out there, so he's not as available. But if you drafted him, feel confident in starting him. He should be good. If you've waited until the 10th round and the 11th round to take him, awesome. He's your starting quarterback, I'm guessing. If you've taken somebody earlier and he's your backup, and you're not feeling too confident about the matchup of your starting quarterback, maybe somebody like a Matt Ryan against Minnesota isn't really attractive to you, put Dak in there. You're gonna be really happy about it. Going into the next kind of streaming pick here, we talked about how we didn't like this game already, but here's a player that I do like from it, Matthew Stafford against Arizona. So Arizona is kind of like a dumpster fire at defense coming into the season. Patrick Peterson is suspended. Their other starting quarterback across from him, injured and out for some time. So they're going with rookies and unproven veterans at the cornerback position, which allows for players like Matthew Stafford to throw the ball over the place to his players like Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay, Kerryon Johnson out of the backfield, and another player that I have later on that I'll talk about as well for a streaming option. But I think Matthew Stafford's a really good option here. If you don't have a quarterback, put him in there. I think his floor is probably 16 to 18 points for you, which is good enough for you to kind of roll with. So, Brian, who else you got?
Well, I'll go into that in a second. But one thing to mention, I agree with you on Matt Stafford. I think he's probably a deeper streaming option that I would pick. However, extremely available in 84% of ESPN leagues. He's only rostered on 16% of leagues, which is amazing. So he's definitely out there for the picking. If check your waivers, check your free agent list. He should be there, and pick him up if you need him. The last guy on this list for quarterbacks, Chad, is, I know you had mentioned to me earlier that the game with Tampa Bay and San Francisco, you were a little worried about the weather, maybe this hurricane influencing it a bit. However, I'm not. And the big reason why is because I think there's enough time for the field to dry out while this passes through. But this Tampa Bay San Francisco game, I think there's some opportunity here. And Jameis Winston, I think, is a great streaming option this week. Here's the deal. Winston has all the tools and all the things available, the weapons that he needs to be successful. This is the year he needs to prove himself, and I think he's going to go out and do it. Had a little bit of a rough preseason, but I think that'll come around, and he's got an easy week 1 matchup against San Francisco. Vegas lines are pretty high on it. He's only rostered, Chad, in 52% of ESPN leagues. So he's available in most leagues out there, 48% availability. So definitely go out, grab Jameis Winston if you need him. He's another guy that can take off, has some wheels on him, and can run the ball, and also can run it in for a touchdown. So he's got a lot of weapons, should put up a lot of points. I think he's good for 15 plus easily, if not closer to 20.
Yeah, the thing with Jameis Winston, Jesus.
Jameis
Winston. The thing with him is that he throws for a lot of yards almost every game that he plays in. What you worry about with him is interception. You're still laughing. What you worry about with him, interceptions and lack of touchdown production from time to time, or inconsistent touchdown production. But he'll throw for 300 or 400 yards in a game. So you kind of have a safe floor with him in terms of yardage. You're just hoping that he capitalizes on those monster wide receivers and monster tight end that he has. And we're hoping that Bruce Arians there opens his eyes up a bit so that he can see those options for him. So I'm with you. I like Jameis Winston a lot, so long as the weather doesn't scare me away from that game. I've picked him up in our league of record. I don't know if you noticed that. I got him on the bench. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's move into tight ends here. The first one I'm going to mention is also from this Detroit-Arizona game, and I mentioned a player just a little bit ago, TJ Hawkinson. Being a rookie, he hasn't been drafted by many teams out there in ESPN, and he has a really good opportunity to shine. Again, this is a defensive backfield that has a lot of injuries and some suspensions involved with it. So Hawkinson has an opportunity to get himself a touchdown week 1 of his NFL career. I think there's an option here for people to go out and kind of take a stab at tight end at TJ, because he is a talented guy. If you watched him in the preseason, his route running is crisp. He's got great blocking, and he didn't drop anything. So he looked good.
Yeah, the other guy on this list I love is Delaney Walker going up against Cleveland. A lot of Cleveland's defense, I think, is going to be pretty good this year, but they're going to need to get the ball out. Delaney Walker had a great preseason, looked really good in the games that we saw him in, and look, he scored a touchdown in the preseason. So Delaney Walker didn't play last year, had the devastating injury, missed the majority of the season. But Delaney Walker's a guy that could easily be picked up on waivers and plugged in as a week 1 or even a plug and play type tight end all season long.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got some favorable matchups. And Cleveland isn't necessarily the strongest at safety. So though I do believe that Cleveland's going to have a really good defense this coming season, they might be struggling up the middle against tight ends a little bit. Delaney Walker, with some proven track record with Marcus Mariota, he's one of his favorite targets, comes back. It's almost as if people have forgotten that when Delaney Walker is healthy, he's a top 10 option at the tight end position. And he's coming in very healthy. And he looked good in the preseason, like you said. So Delanie Walker, who's very available, has almost been undrafted in every league that I've been in, is out there. Go pick him up, stream him in. If you have Trey Burton and you have nobody to play because of his injury, Delanie Walker is a really good option for you.
Yeah, and he is being picked up, so his rostering percentage has gone up a couple percent here over the last week. But so he's up to 87% owned. So, but 13% of the leagues out there still not rostering Delanie Walker. So go out and grab him. He's definitely going to be a guy that can provide value to you.
Absolutely, Brian. Let's talk about some defenses. Who you got?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunity here week one. Hopefully you drafted your first couple weeks worth of defense for streaming anyway. That's kind of what I would advocate. Dallas is a great option. Again, you kind of go back to the Cowboys-Giants game. That Cowboys defense is elite. It looks to be elite anyway. Those linebackers are legit. Giants are should have a pretty rough game against that defense, and they looked really good. They only allowed 42 points, or no, I'm sorry, 44 points all preseason.
Yeah, that's incredible. That linebacking core is just insane. So, and the cornerbacks aren't something to be messed with either. It's one of the better cornerback groups in the NFL. Byron Jones, one of the better corners in the NFL. He doesn't get the respect that he's owed because he doesn't come by with the interceptions, but he stops passes and he stops touchdowns. He's up there with the elites. So, Dallas, I really like. Yeah,
and also just to interject, Chad. Super available on ESPN, guys. So 26.6% rostered in ESPN.
Wow.
So he's available. Yeah, I know. He's available. They. It's a collective group,
he,
not
the
a
defense.
person. Yeah, he, the one player that plays on the defense, is they're available across the league or across most ESPN leagues. Go grab them. The first couple weeks are very juicy for this defense.
Juicy, fruity.
Juicy fruit.
Please don't say the word juicy ever again.
Juicy.
Going into another juicy matchup. The Cleveland Browns going against Tennessee. We talked about how we like Delanie Walker, but outside of that, there's not much more I like with Tennessee. Derrick Henry, love him. I think he's going to have a great season, but that defensive front for Cleveland is no joke. We watched it in the offseason. It was putting pressure on every single team that they played against. It might have been because it looked like they were blitzing 8 all the time on every play, but they weren't at times. Sometimes it was just the front 4. So that defensive front should be electric, should get to the quarterback a lot. So if you have a league that awards you points or awards you extra points for sacks, it's going to be a big one. Mariota tends to hold the ball more to try and create plays. And he throws interceptions too. They got one of the better corners in Ward out there. And they also went and got Greedy Williams over there on the other side. So it's going to be a really good defensive backfield. Take a chance with Cleveland. It's going to be a really good week for them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you whatsoever. Rostered in only 62% of ESPN leagues. This is another defense that you want to get on your squad if you can. A lot of opportunity here. The last defense I'll talk about, Chad, I added this kind of as like my deep pick. This is like a deep sleeper pick for me. I almost want to add it to the sleepers list, but we're gonna use it as a stream. We talked about this team earlier in the news, in the matchups, but Jets defense. Look, I think the Jets defense week 1 could definitely give you some pretty good fantasy points and some upside. They're only rostered in 12.6% of ESPN leagues out there. And, this is a defense that has a lot of talent. You're talking about their best player, Jamal Adams, Leonard Williams, Tremaine Johnson, CJ Mosley, and there's more, right? This is a team that is stacked with talent. They've done a great job. They have an offense that's built to run the ball and control a little bit of time now. Yeah, keep the tempo up. And this is a team that I think, is going to produce some points here maybe this year. They've got some good matchups, and this is one. You've got a quarterback on the other end who's reckless with the ball, throws it up, can at times just throw it up. Those are great things for fantasy points. You want that from a defensive standpoint. So I think the Jets D are a sneaky pick, and they're actually my streaming pick of the week.
Oh, The streaming pick of the week. Love it.
Yes, we need to have a drop for that eventually.
Yes, we do.
Yes, they're my streaming pick of the week.
I love that. I love that pick, Brian, because as I mentioned before, I do believe that the Bills and the Jets is going to be a defensive game. So most people have rostered Bills defense because it's one of the better defenses in the league. But because they're going up against the Jets, I do see this being just a really low-scoring game, and the Jets benefiting from that. So it's a really good pick there. All right, BroMob. Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday and Wednesday to stay up to date on the fantasy football world and to gather any insights on how to dominate your fantasy football league.
Yeah, and BroMob, also be sure, tune in. We are 2 days a week now, so we will be back tomorrow. So tune in tomorrow morning for our fresh episode. We'll be talking starts and sits, sleepers, busts, weather implications, all kinds of stuff. So be sure to get us on Tuesday and Wednesdays now going forward as we drop 2 episodes per week for the rest of the fantasy season to you.
If you aren't on Apple Podcast, we're also on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much anywhere you could think of. We're there. Give us a listen. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FFBros Podcast, and be sure to check out the website, thefantasyfootballbros.com, for all kinds of articles, rankings, news, and so much more. See you tomorrow, BroMob.
Bye, everybody.